After the runaway success of my last video, thank you all, I got a lot of comments asking me to talk about car finance. There are 3 financial traps when it comes to car finance that I want you guys to avoid. And I hope I'm not blowing my own horn here, but I think I've got a slightly different way of looking at car finance, especially after having been through some expensive car finance. I've got a really exciting announcement. This might not seem like a big deal to a lot of you guys, but CarVertical are sponsoring this video. To have brands of this caliber and this size reach out to me and sponsor the channel, it really does mean a lot, and I'm exceptionally grateful. So support the hell out of them because they're supporting me. If you're going to buy a used car, make sure to get a CarVertical report. This will check things like accident damage, mileage discrepancies, and also use as a taxi or other things that you just don't really want people doing with your car. Let's have a look at one of these reports now. So just imagine you're shopping for a little BMW M3. It's your dream car and you're purchasing it with one of the smart ways that I'm going to tell you about in this video. The advert looks good, you know, the car looks lovely. Now if you search for this car on CarVertical, you can then pull up these photos. You can see the car's been absolutely smashed and unscrupulous sellers might be trying to hide this from you. We can also check if the car's been previously stolen. We can also look at the odometer readings and try and figure out if the car's been clocked. Cool thing about CarVertical is if you order one of these reports and then there are no findings on it, you get to use your credits again. Realistically, you only have to purchase this credit once. And if you're always lucky and the cars you check are always good, you'll probably be fine to just use that credit forever. I want you guys to go and support the hell out of CarVertical because they support me. Go and use the code MIC, which will give you 20% off the credits for CarVertical. You can also use the link in the description below this video. Right then, we should probably get back to talking finance. I'm going to get into all the different types of car finance. We're going to talk about PCPs with balloon payments and hire purchases and the downsides of purchasing outright. But to understand car finance, you have to understand car depreciation. And this is where a lot of people go wrong because they look at it from a payments perspective, a deposit perspective, when in reality, you should be looking at it from a value lost perspective. And stick with me. It might be a little bit wordy and a little bit financy, but I promise you it has the potential to really help you in future. I know it did me once I actually wrapped my head around it. I have drawn some graphics to help me demonstrate all of these points. I'm just going to go through some examples of how cars depreciate so we can get an understanding of what we're going to talk about. And then as we talk about the different finance products, we'll relate back to these graphs to show you how they take you through the graph. So first of all, let's take a normal car, a Ford Puma, a small SUV or a hatchback or a crossover, anything that's not special. Normal car prices start quite high, and I think most people are aware of the fact that the moment you drive the car off the lot, it loses, 10% of its value. And a general rule of thumb for a normal car is by 3 years old, it will have lost half of its value. Normal cars then go on and consistently lose value up to about 15 to 20 years old, at which point they're basically worth nothing or a couple £1,000s. This is the depreciation curve for a normal car. Now, this is Mick Drives Cars, so we're going to do a second depreciation curves for sporty cars, for special cars, for cars that are a little bit more desirable. So these will generally start at a higher price than your average car, and they will follow the same trend where after 3 years, generally, they will lose about half of their value. The depreciation curve starts to tail off and slow down. And most of these sporty or special cars will reach a flatline point where they will no longer lose value over time. You can see this today with the GT86. These are now, more than 10 years old, and they seem to have absolutely bottomed out at about £10,000 for a decent example. E92 M3 has done the same thing. Seem to be rock solid at about £10,000 to £12,000. So generally, your sportier car or your more desirable or special car will have a rock bottom where it will get to a stage where it no longer loses value. This is important. Now, we're into speculation territory here. These cars are generally the ones that have a chance to appreciate long term. So if you can get through that bottom, there should be a rise on the other end. There are some other depreciation curves, and I'll throw in a caveat generally, which is that different brands will depreciate at different rates. Some models will hold their value a little bit longer, some models will depreciate even faster. But these two curves are a really good overall representation of what you might expect from normal cars and sporty cars. So now we understand depreciation. We can visualize the curve. And I think if you're anything like me, as soon as you see that curve, you start to think, well, I should be buying sporty cars at the bottom of the curve. And yeah, you should, and so should I, but it's a tricky thing to do and to time. I'm not going to pretend to be some master fortune teller of what the hell car values are going to do, but I think you can see where I'm going with all of this. So now let's talk finance products. Let's talk about the most popular, the most prolific, the one that everyone is aware of and probably uses if they're in a nearly new to newish car. And this is called PCP. In different markets, it might be called something else, but there's a few defining characteristics. It gets you a new or nearly new car. You have the car for a period of years. And at the end of the agreement, you hand back the car or you make a large balloon payment. This is finance trap number one. And I've done this to myself a number of times now, and it's never felt good. If you try and get out the contract in years 1 or 2 or 3 or the end of it, or you try and get a loan to pay off the balloon payment, or you pay the balloon payment in cash, it will never feel good. Doesn't matter if you've got a brand new car or a slightly used, approved used example, it never feels good. And if we come back to the depreciation curve, I'll show you why. So at this point, when you're going for PCP, the depreciation curves for normal cars and sporty cars are very similar. And the key here is, the reason the dealer or finance company is able to give you a minimum value is because car values generally follow these trends. Let's say you buy a 1-year-old approved used car, like a BMW 340i, right? Nice car, good car. We can plot the new price, the 1-year-old price, and then if you're going to have this contract on a 3-year PCP, we can plot the projected 4th year value. On this curve, essentially all you're doing is paying off the depreciation on the car. Now, it feels good in terms of your payments being fairly low, but what it does to your finances is horrific. The downside of PCP is that you're paying off the depreciation, so you're already hurting yourself, but then you're also paying interest on your payments of paying off the depreciation. You're not building any equity. You're not paying yourself. You're only paying the depreciation that just goes poof into the wind. It is a trap. There's a better way to own nice cars. So now let's talk hire purchase. HP. This is essentially just a loan for the full value of the car. You're not paying just the depreciation for that number of years, you're paying for the entire car. So at the end of the contract, there's nothing left to pay and you fully own the car. Let's take a normal car, a 1-year-old car. At the end of those 4 years, you still have a car that is worth something. You have some equity. And what you can then do, if you're a degenerate like me and you want a really nice car, there's a very effective way to ladder your way up. You then trade that vehicle in at 10,000 towards another car that is now the one you actually want, but you get 10,000 off the price. This is what people have been doing for years and years with the housing market. This is how you step ladder your way up the housing market, but you can do this with cars too. Us people in our 20s and 30s, finance is hard, man. The world is a tough fucking place to live financially. We got to pay a lot for a lot of stuff. So if you're a petrol head, it can seem impossible. But if you just do this staircasing approach, you can actually get to some really good metal after like your second or third staircase, which is what, between 5 and 6 years. You can also use HP for a car of any age, which is one of the other benefits. So if you can find a car that you think is at or near the bottom of its depreciation curve, probably one of the sportier cars, you can then get a HP and have no depreciation, which is quite fantastic. You could buy the car for, £12,000, and at the end of 3 years, it'd still be worth £12,000. And then at that point, all you've done is pay the interest on those payments, but essentially the entirety of that payment you've been paying to yourself. It's really, really good, and it will set you up so much further, because at the end of those 3 years, you've still got something worth 12k. You can then enjoy that car for free and have no payment, which is amazing. Or you can trade that in towards something even newer and more exciting, or something older but more expensive and even more exciting. This is the way you go from like a cheap $2,000 MX-5 to a $10,000 GT86 to a Lotus Elise to an AMG GT. This is how you staircase, because the equity you build in those cars will take you forward into the next one, and so on and so forth. It's a game changer if you can get to understand this. If you're my age, our parents were blessed to be able to do this with houses. Our generation can't do this with houses anymore, right? The world is not in such a way to do that. But you can take advantage and build equity in cars. And now you can see why PCP is such a trap. It's the opportunity cost of not doing what I've just described. And lastly, you've got buying cash. Now, buying cash can be a trap. People will talk about how proud they are that they bought a car cash. But if you buy a car that's anywhere on the first half of that depreciation curve, cash, you fucked up. Almost as bad as just setting fire to a percentage of that money. Yes, it's nice to be seen in the new car and people perceive you a certain way and all that stuff. But it's not worth setting fire to, £15,000, £20,000 that you're going to lose over your ownership of that car. Buying cash, however, is really good if used in conjunction with hire purchase. Say you get your first more expensive car. Let's say you get, a £10,000 GT86. You've done the hire purchase for 3 years. You've paid off the GT86. You now own a GT86 that's still worth £10,000 because they're not losing any value. Say during that time you've saved up a bit of money, £5,000, you now have £15,000. Forever you've wanted an E92 M3. A nice one is about 15, 16 grand. Well, you can trade in your GT86 because you own it, you have equity in it, add your little bit of money, and now you've got an E92 M3 with no car payment. Buying cash is amazing if you do it in the right way, but it's really tricky to get that balance right. You don't want to buy too new. You don't want to deal with depreciation on your cash. If the car's going to have any depreciation, you should use payments to offset it. Let me know if you like this video format or this topic. It's not something that I've really done before, but after that last video, I thought I owed it to you guys to give you my thoughts on this stuff and some tips for how you can come out ahead in today's miserable economy. My name's Mick. I drive cars. Peace.